Hello everybody, welcome back to another riveting review. Today's review is going to be about Thunderbolts, Marvel's equivalent to the Suicide Squad. Now, just preface this one with a little bit of backstory on this one. I'm very familiar with the comic book version of Thunderbolts, the actual team. The original incarnation was meant to be a bunch of supervillains led by Baron Zemo. They would pose as heroes, like new identities, new costumes, new everything. And they would essentially pretend to be heroes in order to gain the trust of various agencies and governments, and they would use that trust to try to rule the world. However, a lot of the members of that team actually liked being heroes, and a number of them became heroes in their own rights. Like, the Songbird specifically, a standout from that team. But then, obviously, as time goes on, there's been different variations of the Thunderbolts name, the Red Hulk had a team of Thunderbolts, Winter Soldiers had control of the Thunderbolts to a degree. There's been some variations. Now, this one here, it's definitely a lot of leftovers from shows and movies, like we have Ghost from Ant-Man and the Wasp back in 2015, we have a couple of characters from Black Widow with Yelena and Taskmaster and Red Guardian, we have some stuff with Falcon and the Winter Soldier when we introduced Walker, we have an entire roster of leftover characters, that we just threw together in to be this new team, and that's sort of like the basic thing there. Now, honestly, this movie was, I have seen far worse things brought by the MCU, and I've seen far superior things. This movie is like right in that middle ground where it's passable enough to be like, okay, this was a movie, this had some entertaining moments, it was pretty okay in some regards. But obviously there was some stuff, like some small stuff, some big stuff here and there that's kind of like, didn't really like that, didn't like that bit, didn't like that part. That kind of drags it down a little bit, but I have to be completely honest with myself because this is how my reviews go. I'm just honest with how I feel about things. I thought the movie was pretty passable. I didn't really hold much hope or expectations for this movie. Truth be told, I was kind of like a little bit let down with some of the stuff that was revealed once this movie got announced, and I was like, I don't really like that option, and even now, I still would have taken a lot of different changes, but, what we got is not entirely the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. It's pretty passable. The standouts, obviously, for me, is like John Walker, a favorite character of mine from the recent era of the MCU that they tried to turn into, like, the bad guy and the punching bag, but he outshined it and unintentionally became one of the greatest characters they ever conceived. In this one, they try to do this again to a lesser degree. They always, like, shit-talking him a little bit, and they try to do a little retconning of stuff from Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which, no, John Walker did nothing wrong. Enough said. Wyatt Russell plays a brilliant performance, and, John Walker is just a perfect, character. He's flawed, he's an asshole, but he's got the experience, he's got the, the power and the skill set to back it up. He's just not, he's not a chump, despite what a lot of the characters try to take the piss out of them, a lot, which, granted, they all kind of do, but Walker does get a little bit of the brunt of it. What else? I mean, Sentry is in this movie, which, hey, it's a nice character. I was a little concerned with what they were gonna do, but his character was pretty decent. Not quite as great as his comic book counterpart, but I felt like they got pretty well done. His costume, I've talked about before, like the panel lining, not really a big thing of that, but beyond that, he's been pretty good. Except when they get to, like, the Void part. That one's a little bit lackluster, but it works to a degree, And despite what you might think about Thunderbolts being like an ensemble movie, it does feel way more of a Yelena movie, And Yelena is not a terrible character, and Florence Pugh is a pretty good actress. I think it's just they try to shoehorn her into stuff that I feel like doesn't quite work. They need to really branch her out into something else, but this was pretty much her movie, and the other characters are just kind of supporting, because she's the main driving force. I mean, the movie literally starts with her and ends on a shot of her, It's mostly about her, still dealing with the death of her sister, Natasha, and how her life feels like shit. She's got no purpose. She's just only got the job being like a glorified assassin and killer, and there's no higher calling, there's no purpose, and throughout the movie, she's going to find said purpose, which is essentially just following in her sister's footsteps into becoming a hero. And that sort of seems to be the theme, that these characters are all like loners, people that have been kind of chewed up, tossed out in the fray, and they're teaming up to find a higher calling, And for some of these characters it works, like Yelena and Walker, Ghost kind of a little bit, but it's here or there. Some of the action is pretty alright. Not too many of them were actually like super shocking or like, oh damn, that was crazy, I never seen that before. It was pretty standard stuff, but not like boring. I could say that. I would say that none of the action scenes were boring to me. Obviously, if you are familiar with DC films, like the David Ayer Suicide Squad, you're gonna recognize a lot of certain beats, because the basic premise of this movie is this character Valentina, who's played by Elaine from Seinfeld, is basically trying to cover up that she's been trying to create a superhero like pet of hers, and she is like trying to clean up house, gets the various Thunderbolts together, and tries to wipe them all off. And they go and find the Sentry there, and she tries to manipulate the Sentry into being her like glorified superhero puppet. And the Thunderbolts have to go fight him, and it leads to a whole thing where Sentry's the big bad antagonist of the film, and they have to stop him. Similar to what the David Ayer Suicide Squad was. You had one character that had godlike abilities, and you had a lot of characters that didn't really have much of the power scheme. Although, with the exception is with the Suicide Squad, at least most of them had a varying degree of skill sets, gadgets, and equipment and abilities to be a little more variety. And here, it's like three of the characters are just super soldiers, and everyone's got guns, except with like Ghost, who's got her phasing ability, which I don't know. It's fine. Obviously, they don't really end the Sentry thing with a fight, more or less. Because they have to go into the Sentry's mind to help him deal with the Void, this alternate personality, this entity in him that's like very evil and wanting to destroy everything, and they basically have to like hug it out, which I've heard a lot of people kind of say that that's like the dumbest thing ever, but in its defense, I feel like that's sort of kind of what you have to do with this character, unless you have another character that can easily cloud on Sentry and Void. You kind of have to rely on this particular gimmick, because that's sort of how Sentry works in the comics. That's sort of his main like appeal, that he's one of the most strongest characters in the Marvel Universe, so strong that he has to be literally his own worst enemy, and his mental stability has always been a point of issue in the books, you know. You never know when he's gonna snap and start doing crazy shit, you know. That's like the whole point. So I understand the reasoning. Sure, would I have preferred a more traditional fight? That would have been nice, but, you know, it's one of those things where it sounds good on paper, the execution could be debatable. I understand what it needed to do. It did it sort of okay, but your mileage may vary depending on how you view these types of things. In terms of acting, I don't really think I noticed anyone really sleeping through their roles. Florence Pugh did this role pretty well. Wyatt Russell did excellent as John Walker, as always. He elevates the scenes he's in. Lewis Pullman, who plays Sentry, I think he was definitely a standout in this, because he has to do a lot of work. He has to play Bob, you know, the timid, kind of broken guy that's trying not to really inconvenience everybody. He's got like a bit of a tragic past, and then he's playing Sentry, you know, a more like refined, like upstanding, heroic guy, and then he's playing the Void, you know, this godlike, scary, intense being. You know, that requires a lot from an actor, and Lewis Pullman pulls it off. You know, he did really well, and I would like to see more of him, more of that character in the future. Ghost was pretty okay. I mean, I think the problem is you're dealing with a character that you haven't seen in like 10 years, so there's a lot of like changes. She's more of like a snarky, you know, one-liner thing, kind of like Yelena. Not much difference there. You know, David Harbour, you know, he pulls in his weight. He's always going in there. I never see him sleep through a role, and this is pretty good. And his version of Guardian, you know, while not the particular version I would want, you know, writing-wise, he does pull a good performance, even if some of the jokes and the style of comedy he brings doesn't really do much, you know. What else? I don't know. I guess that this is like one of the rare times where the MCU at least attempts to be not as comedic to a degree. I mean, they sort of not kind of deal with hard subject matter. They kind of play around with it where they mention it but they don't show it, kind of thing. And that's sort of been like the theme. It's like more about these characters getting through their various traumas to then become part of something bigger and, you know, become heroes, which, you know, some characters work, some characters it's like, well, I don't know if you're really in that area or whatnot. But yeah, the movie's been pretty passable, I would say. Like, for negatives, like, there's some, like, obviously the John Walker stuff, you know, they're trying to shit on him a little bit. Some of the snarkiness I can kind of go without. Some plot lines don't quite make sense because they don't feel like they match up with the bit of the MCU. Like, there's a lot, there's like little nitpicks I got where I think there was Ghost was talking about how she can't choose what type of outfit she's got because she's got to have a containment outfit to keep her from phasing, into the ground. But I specifically recalled that Ant-Man and the Wasp, Janet, with her magic powers, suddenly cured Ghost of that affliction, which I don't know, is that a thing anymore? Or we're just not going to acknowledge that? Don't know. Then we've got Bucky being a congressman, and it's like, well, okay, he was a congressman for whatever reason, I guess, just to only facilitate him being close to Valentina, trying to get information on her, because he's always trying to talk to Valentina's, secretary, and try to get her to rat, and supposedly, I'm not accepting this fact, but supposedly that secretary is meant to be Songbird, but I don't want to believe that, and I refuse to believe that, because that's not Songbird. And also, the congressman bit, doesn't last, and apparently it's already done, by the time the movie's over, the Congressman Bucky arc is done, and it's like, well, what the hell was the point of that? It was very short-lived. It's like you have an idea that's okay, that could be kind of interesting, but then they don't really do anything with it, and then it's over, and then you're like, well, what was the point of that? And you're just like, okay, I guess. But yeah. Yeah, I don't know, there's not much to really say. I would say it's a movie that you could kind of chill out a bit. You're not gonna feel like you want to headbutt a jet engine, and I wouldn't say it's gonna move, mountains. It's just a passable film, But yeah, that's about all I can say on that one. If you've seen the movie, what are your thoughts on it? Please leave them down in the comment section below. Leave any suggestions on topics in the superhero genre to talk about or make videos on. I do like reading comments. With that said, everybody, I'm gonna call it a day. Thank you all for coming along on this little journey. See you all in the next video. Goodbye.
The dust and stone.